Let's dive into the CFL stuff. The CFLPA passes some CBA amendments. They did not extend the CBA, so it is still expired at the end of 2021, going into training camps 2022, which unfortunately, Kyle, sets us up for all sorts of drama going into next season when we should have a full schedule on the docket and where there's going to be the potential of a delay or controversy about certain things going into that CBA and the Players Association playing their cards, and you get the idea. But for now, they have amended the CBA. Here's Dave Naylor and Farhan Lalji from TSN with the details.
The CFLPA's team reps did pass an amendment for the 2021 collective bargaining agreement that would allow the two sides to get back on the field this season. The Board of Governors has to ratify that on Monday. Dave, what are some of the interesting changes and highlights?
Well, CFL rosters were due to have 46 players on them. This season, they're going to have a maximum of 44, but teams can opt to dress just 43. Of those, 2 of them were going to be global players. That number will stay at 1. And in an interesting twist, the league has the discretion to add 2 playoff teams to the format. Now, this is believed to be if for some reason they can't start by August 5th, the regular season gets shortened, they could adopt what would essentially be an 8-team playoff tournament.
Teams will also be allowed to keep an additional 5 players on the practice roster. That's assuming the quarantine regulations around the border stay the same. And speaking of that, the Public Health Agency of Canada is still reviewing the CFL's proposal. All sides point to that heading in a positive direction. The two sides did meet last Thursday to discuss it and go through those details. And as far as the idea of fans in the stands, the league really wants to make sure that at least 35% of fans in stadiums are allowed back in. Now, as far as the provinces are concerned, they've got to sign off on that. That will not come by Monday. So the league and its teams and its owners are going to have to take a bit of an educated guess based on where they see the numbers trending, based on the background conversations they've had with provincial officials, so that they can make that decision and that vote on Monday.
Yeah, and more good news on that front. Recently, a committee made up of representatives of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the 3 Ontario CFL teams submitted a proposal looking for 35% of stadiums to be open to fans as early as July 2nd, 100% by Ontario's Stage 3 of reopening, which would be as early as July 23rd. So that's more good news in terms of where everyone expects this trend to be going.
If that in fact does happen, it could mean that some of the teams that were scheduled from the East to play in the West early in the season, those games could get moved back to the East. We'll see how it all turns out on Monday. The schedule could be released as early as that day.
Okay, so the schedule is ready to go, is my understanding. That they have it in hand. They've had it in hand for a while, and they've been waiting for the moment to release it. Now, we all thought that they were waiting for the moment to release it when you would end up having everyone come together and say, yep, all systems go. I didn't realize it was going to have to be basically ratified by a vote of the Board of Governors. Makes sense that that's a requirement, but that just hadn't crossed my mind. So now here we are. They're going to ratify it. Like, there's no way that they're not going to ratify, whether it's 7 teams that say yes, 8 teams that say yes, or all 9 that say yes. I just, because we know this is going to go through, because we know that there is not going to be 3 teams that say no, and you're going to end up with 6 saying yes. How bad of a look would that be, Kyle? Is the first thing that crossed my mind. If you vote no and you're the only one, or you vote no and you're the only 2, and it comes out, and your fans who have been waiting forever, it feels like, to watch the sport that they love, to watch their teams, to watch their players, if you are to vote no, and it comes out that you voted no, and I sure as hell hope it gets reported about who voted no if there is a no vote, because they deserve to be punished for it. And if that comes out, how are you going to look as a president, CEO? How are you going to look at your head coach, your GM, your players, or your fan base anytime in the next 5 years and say, no, we got your back. We got your back. Anything for you guys. Because that no vote, once it becomes public, is a clear sign that, oh no, this is about the money. And like, we understand it's a business and this is always going to be about money at the end of the day. But at this point, you're going to lose money regardless of whether you play or you don't. And the idea that you're going to vote no, that's going to look so much worse. So I almost hope that there is some cowardice involved here, and the people who are either being told to vote no or the people that are planning to vote no, they wake up and realize the optics and how much that will hurt them moving forward. And maybe they're just cold, shrewd businessmen. They don't give a damn about anybody's feelings. And maybe they see XFL on their horizons and they don't give a damn about their own team because they're more interested in the money that's coming in from Redbird Capital and all these different things that are being rumored out there as the future of the finance of the CFL. But what I'm saying is all of those extenuating circumstances, all of those projections down the line, strip them away. If I'm a fan of the Argos, a diehard fan, and the team is run by MLSE and they vote no, or if I am Montreal and I'm a big, big fan and I love it and I want to see Vernon Adams Jr. hit the field this year, guess what? He's still going to hit the field. But if you have the new ownership come in there and vote no, like how are you supposed to go to Danny Machoch and be like, listen, you've been working really hard. You've done a great job, great draft classes back-to-back years, a lot of French Canadians for our fans to get excited about, but I just don't think we can play this year. The money just doesn't make sense for me. That is such a bad look.
Yeah. So again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is going to be a unanimous vote, but if it's not, I think it's going to be 8, and then the Argos will be out. The Argos will end up playing, but they'll be the one vote that says no, we're not going to play this year. Because look around the CFL. Edmonton, you don't think they want to get off the ground? They just launched a new name to the franchise. Calgary's on board. Winnipeg's on board. BC, perhaps.
You cannot wait. This is the thing for me about BC. Their financial situation, their ownership situation, they should be the number one team that doesn't want to play. But you know why they do? They're paying Mike Riley a ton of money, and you're saying, well, if they don't play, then they don't have to pay him that money. There's going to be grievances filed on all of that stuff. And if you're BC, do you really want to waste a year of having one of the best quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League? Like, you want to actively say to your fan base, you guys haven't cared that much about us for a little while here in the large swaths that we got back in the early 2010s when Travis Lulay was going to Grey Cups and Andrew Harris was around and all the rest. We're sending the message now that we don't care either. Like, you cannot do that. I don't care if it's Toronto, Montreal, BC, struggling markets, attendance-wise, you can't vote no and look everybody in the eye that surrounds your team with a clear conscience.
Yeah, but going back to your point about staying faced with the fans and the people in the organization, coaches, players, I think it's important for them to, get that vote of confidence from ownership to say, hey, we're getting off the ground this year. We're playing a season because we have to. The future of the CFL rests on it. You can't sit out again, right? You have to play football this year. Look around the world. All the leagues are playing, and the CFL can't just sit to the wayside and say, I think we're going to wait one more year. No, you can't, because when you come back, there's no guarantee that you're going to have the same interest level that you did when you left, which, to be honest, wasn't great. So if you're the Toronto Argonauts, and look, I was running through the teams that I think are going to vote yes on this. Ottawa and Hamilton are kind of a given because, to Dave Naylor's report, they went to the provincial government and said, or the federal government and said, hey, can we have 35% capacity, which I did the math, works out to be about 8,250 at Tim Hortons Field. Might be a little bit higher because the way it is, right? It's like, the attendance to today's playoff game was 25,000. It's like, how the hell they get 25,000 in here all season? They've been bragging about sellouts. It's only been 24. How they get 25 in here? But it happens. So
the Stipley baby, the Stipley. That's the answer. There's 1,000 people standing at the bar in the one end zone.
Yeah, it works out to be about mid 8,000. I look at the Toronto Argonauts and I say, okay, what are you going to do now, right? Because you might be, the people on the way out here. And if that's the case, I've always wondered this, and I've actually never said it on radio or on our podcast. If the Argos are out, and they do want to, partner with the XFL, who's going to go to those games? You can't get people to go to the CFL. What makes you think they're going to come to the XFL when there's no history behind it? Because I know this. The people that go to Argos games, they bleed Argos blue. They remember Mike Morielli as an Argo. They remember Pinball in his day as an Argo. They're going to say, huh? The Toronto Extreme or whatever stupid name they give an XFL franchise.
No, they'll stay the Argos. I mean,
they'll stay the Argos, but are they going to stay the same colors and everything, or you think there's going to be another rebrand? This is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah,
it's not going to be what those fans are used to. And the very little fan base that they have, I've always said it, the amount of fans they have that go to games is not a lot. But the people that go to those games are die-hard Argos fans. And I would hate to see what a building of the Toronto Argonauts in the XFL would look like, because it'd be horrendous.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it would be, but again, if MLSE is all about the business, which is what we're talking about here with the vote that's coming up on Monday.
Business decision is to play football.
But if the business decision, and again, we're not here to fix the Argos today, and we're not here to talk about XFL potential merger, but tying all these threads together, if MLSE is all about business, as we're discussing, and they're saying it doesn't make sense financially for us, we don't feel like losing a bunch of money by playing a season where we're going to lose money by paying a bunch of people to do something that we're not going to make anything off of. What's to say that they wouldn't say, well, we don't give a damn about violating our past when it comes to our fan base, the true passionate fans that come. There's not enough of them. You know what makes us happy? The money that comes from a company that has capital that wants to share it with us to work under an umbrella heading with the XFL and the CFL teams, and we all get revenue sharing or whatever the finances are on that stuff. That stuff's all over my head. But if it's about dollars, then the passionate, diehard people like Ben Grant, who you and I love talking to, who knows Argos history backwards and forwards and loves talking about the Argos and breaking down the Argos, like if those types of people are going to have their back turned by the people who own their group, then and Ben Grant said, by the way, and I hosted the breakdown with him this week, that he actually doesn't believe that MLSE, and he's not reporting on any of this stuff, but he just says, I have a hard time believing that MLSE doesn't want to play, which I think is, again, super interesting why the results of this need to be public, is that we need to find out, because there needs to be a public shaming for whoever it says no.
It'll come out.
Because they're going to play, but you would think that it would come out. I believe that it will come out.
There's animosity within the owners if somebody votes no.
Yeah, but you don't. Well, I don't know, though, because I think there's always animosity amongst them, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in those Board of Governors meetings that people just don't know about.
So Come on, Bob Young.
Yeah, well,
if it's the Argos, shame them.
I think it would come out, but I hope that they're held accountable for it, because the message that you're sending there is absolutely horrific. The other thing I wanted to bounce around here, Kyle, is the idea, and I find this to be incredible, the idea of the expanded playoff. Because they mentioned in that clip, the reporting there from Dave and Farhan there is that the CFL has the potential to expand from 6 to 8 teams. Now, when you are Major League Baseball and you're adding an extra wild card game, sure. When you are the National Football League expanding the playoffs to 7 teams per conference instead of 6 per conference this past year, sure, you got 32 in there. If you're the NBA and you're expanding it to have a play-in tournament so that 4 teams that are all in the bottom 3 or 4 of their conference can get in and have more television ratings, sure. Expanding the playoffs always adds stakes. Anytime that you add stakes, you are going to end up having higher television ratings, more interest, better attendance when it's possible in person, all the rest. It's never a bad idea for business to add playoff games. If leagues could have their way, the smartest thing financially to do to drive ratings, to drive revenue, to drive intrigue is have your whole damn season be a playoff. Like, it's part of the reason why I believe NCAA football does so well, aside from
every game's important.
It's outside of the insatiable craziness. It's that every game feels like a playoff. And of course, there's the college football championship, and it's the final 4 teams. But in order to get into the college football championship, you basically have to win your conference.
Yeah.
Well, in order to get into the conference championship, you need to not lose to a small school. You have to beat, like if you're at Alabama, and people fall asleep at the wheel on this one where they say, well, Alabama's just better than everybody. And it's the SEC, man. Like the SEC every single year, there's 3 or 4 teams that if Alabama falls asleep at the wheel for 1 second, they're not going to win the SEC. They're not going to the college football championship.
And it's happened in the past before.
It has. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But the idea here being, when I watch Alabama play against Texas A&M, that game matters. Right? Like that game matters because even if they blow Texas A&M out, well, they still have to beat, I don't know, Florida State the next week. And if they don't beat them, then every single game matters and it holds stakes. So the idea of the CFL expanding the playoff makes so much sense. But having 8 of your 9 teams make the playoffs is amazing.
It's a bad look. It's a bad look.
That is absolutely amazing. If that ends up happening, I'm not going to be complaining because I get to talk more playoff football. But the expanded here, and this is what I honestly think too, it's being talked about as kind of like this fix for the season being delayed if it starts after August 5th. I think on Monday there's going to be a yes vote. I think we're going to go ahead on August 5th. I think we're still going to get the expanded playoff. Because what I've learned from all these other leagues, if the CFL is following suit on all these other leagues and the trends that they have shown with the ratings and the interest that I've talked about, is that if you end up adding that extra playoff setup, even if you have 9 teams in your league, it's good for you. So even if they're starting on August 5th, as soon as you start talking about expanding playoffs, you're going to expand playoffs. Like this almost feels like the soft launch of the CFL saying, yeah, we're thinking about it. It might be a thing. We'll see down the. But here's the other funny thing, is that I'm talking about the top 8 teams, and let's say it's I don't know how they would shake this out, but like the top 2 seeds get a bye, and then the bottom 2 of each. But
this is the thing. Like,
but,
there's no way to
but
actually make this work.
But you can't do it by division, of course, because then the East, every single team is going to make the playoffs no matter what. So you would have to go to an overall ranking of the seeds, right? Where it would be a 1 through 8 tournament, and you would have the top 4 get the first weekend off. The bottom 4 would play against each other in 2 separate games, and then you'd have to reseed, and you'd have to play semifinals, and then they would play it. So this is what I'm saying is it gets pretty tricky. But can you imagine being the team that finishes 9th? Like, the rest of the Canadian Football League is all still alive going into middle of November, late November, whenever the timing shakes out for the playoffs to actually start. And you're the only team. Because if you're the Toronto Blue Jays and you don't make the playoffs, that's fine. There's 15 to 20 other teams that also didn't make the playoffs. If you are the Toronto Argonauts and you don't make the playoffs, you're the only one.
I'm going to make an allegation.
Lonely.
Yeah, I'm going to make an allegation, and I think
you want reckless
speculation? No, I don't need it, because I think I'm 100% right on this.
Oh, wow.
I think this idea 100% came from a West Division team, because we hear it every single bleeping year from the West Division fans. This is ridiculous. Our 4th place team is way better than any team you have in the East, or our 5th place team is better than any team you have in the East. And you guys get all these playoff games, and, your 3rd seed in the East is, whatever record, right? Or 2nd seed in the East is whatever record. It's like, oh, they're 7-9, or 7-11, and they're in the playoffs. It's ridiculous. Our West team has 3 more wins than them. Sorry, it's just the way it works out. So this 100% came from the West, because to your point about if they go to 8 playoff teams, that 9th team in the CFL, the only team that's out, it looks really bad on them. But it kind of already looks bad. Like, if you're in the bottom 3 of the league, and I know you can say, oh, it's the bottom 3rd of the league. It's like, no, it's pretty bad. You're in the bottom 3rd of the league. You should make the playoffs, especially in the East Division, because we've seen a lot of East Division seasons where it's been bad. And the Hamilton Tiger Cats were not great and squeezed into the playoffs. Why? The East Division was bad.
Yeah. Montreal wasn't. I don't believe they were fantastic in 2019, but they hosted the East semifinal. Like, the crossover was Edmonton, who came in, and Edmonton was clearly the better team on that day. They deserved to win even on the road. So to your point, I think that it had to have come from the West, because what would be the advantage? You have to think about it's like a CTV promotion for a new drama, Motive. What would be the motive for the Hamilton Tiger Cats to want to have 2 more teams in the playoffs? They don't give a damn about the bottom of the league. They believe they're going to be at the top of the league.
Orlando Steinauer has said numerous times before, they have one goal when they go into a season, and it's win the Grey Cup. But to do that, you have to win the East. Be the best team in your division and leave no doubt. In 2019, the first year of Orlando Steinauer, they did that. They left no doubt. The Hamilton Tiger Cats going into the playoffs were the best team in the East Division. And they left no doubt in the playoffs and went to the Grey Cup. Performance in the Grey Cup, not fantastic. But, that's what I'm getting at, right? It's like, if you're the team in the East Division, you want to be number 1. You don't want to sneak in as a weak number 2 and face that crossover team. And it seems that it's always like that. But moving forward, who knows? The BC Lions might fall off. Mike Riley might say, after this season, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to play in BC anymore.
I want to go be a firefighter.
Yeah, and they have what's his name, Arndt, as the quarterback in BC.
They got Arndt and Nathan Rourke there as well, the Canadians. So
it's bad.
I wonder, the one team in the East that I could find some motive for them wanting to have an expanded playoff would be Ottawa, because they expect to be near the bottom, I would think, this year, and for them to get to the playoffs, in quotation marks, would look a lot better than finishing in the bottom 3 once again. And
Yeah.
if they end up getting to the playoffs, think about it as well. Paul LaPolice just took Zach Collaros and a bunch of guys that were kind of thrown together late in the game in the season in 2019, took them to a Grey Cup, and they won the Grey Cup. So for him to get thrown into the dance and get put in a one-game winner-take-all situation, which is all the playoffs are, LaPolice might find some value in that. So he's the one guy that I could say might drive that conversation a little bit in the East. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this comes from the West because they're saying, let's get all of our teams in here and let us all fight for the Grey. But again, that opens up the possibility of what Steve Milton always talks to us about, which is that you have to have East versus West in the Canadian Football League when it comes to the Grey Cup Championship. You cannot have a West versus West. I even sometimes watch old Grey Cups like 2001 where it's Winnipeg against Calgary. I'm like, I know they were in the East at that time because Ottawa wasn't in, but it still seems weird to have Winnipeg going up against Calgary, West versus West. And the idea of the crossover team making their way through to having a Battle of Alberta in the Grey Cup, it's like, well, it's sexy, but half the country's going to get lobbed off and lose a lot of interest because they don't have anybody that they've seen play very often out here.
Yeah, so let's draw up an 18 playoff scenario in the CFL. Like you said, how do you format it? All of a sudden, that team that finishes first in each division, do they not get a bye? Are they asked to go out
think you give the
next week?
I think you give the top, how do we do this?
So again, you're going to add an extra week to the season. Are we going to have the Grey Cup full-time in December? That's what I want to know.
Well, full-time in December until they possibly bump the season up into the spring. Like that's, again, there's so much unprecedented fluctuation here potentially that I think it's all just one big juggling act at this point. But regardless, we hope that the vote gets approved, it goes forward, and that if somebody votes no, they get shamed for it. And but I love that the idea has been floated, but there's no confirmation, and it's the CFL is not hoping to have the season delayed. So for them to put out that there's the potential in this CBA amendment to add 2 teams, why would they put that out if they weren't planning to do it at some point? Because they're hoping there's a yes vote. They're hoping the season gets started on August 5th. They're hoping training camps get kicked off in the first week of July and that they end up like the other thing in this, just quickly, we talked about preseason last week, so we don't need to go long in this, but I just want to mention no preseason games is, first of all, it's a no-brainer. Second of all, first couple of weeks of football might not be great football.
No, it's bad.
And it usually is a bit of a learning curve for guys to get back into football shape. And I think the best football of the season until the playoffs actually comes from weeks like 2 to 6, because that's when everybody is right and for the most part healthy and the weather's warm and guys can just get out there and play fast. Then you get worn down a little bit middle of the season. Then you fire it up for a couple of games around Labor Day. Then you settle in and figure out where you are for the playoff chase and kind of gauge it from there until you hit the playoffs, and then you go full bore. But yeah, that first couple of weeks without preseason games, there's only so much that you can do, especially in like managing the bodies in a 21-day training camp without a chance to play against somebody on the other team. You can't even go full contact.
Yeah.
I don't think, because we've seen what's happened to CFL practices and training camp. It's limited shoulder pads, limited days being able to hit, limited sessions of this, like limited time on field, limited time in meetings. So yeah, you're going to have these long training camps, but what are you going to get done with them other than getting everybody slowly ramped up to speed? There's going to be days at camps across the country where I think guys are going to take the field in like shells and shorts and go through a walkthrough, do a little bit of 7-on-7, catch some balls, go through coverages, run a little bit, and then be done. There's going to be days, because they're not just going to get out there and say, here, everybody go tear your groins and rip your hamstrings. They're going to slowly ramp this up, and it's going to be a slow ramp up for everybody involved.
Yeah, when I heard that there was no preseason games, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how this is going to work. And I wonder if teams would visit other teams' training camps, right? So the Argos come to Tim Hortons Field and they have some sort of inter-squad game like you see in the NFL. But then I'm like, wait, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't think the CFL wants to, in their preseason, to bring 2 groups of 70 people together, because obviously the possibility of, positive cases goes up. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it.
I was just thinking they don't want fights. Like, I don't think you want 2 years worth of bottled up professional football testosterone thrown together for the first time on a field with nobody but coaches. Like, that's dangerous. Honestly, there's a lot of dudes out there trying to prove themselves and make a team. Training camps, even in your own team, breed fights. A training camp against somebody that you don't even know and don't care about, there would be some nasty stuff that would happen in that setup. So I think for me, that's a player safety issue, is not allowing those guys to go at each other in that setting. But again,
I mean, I'm fine with it. They do it in the NFL and it works out, right?
It's true, but they're not even allowed to hit their own teammates relatively cleanly in training camps, because that's part of CBA negotiations of, hey, our guys don't want to be allowed to crush each other. That's part of the negotiations, is protecting player safety during camps. I don't think they would open that up. It's an interesting idea for the future, maybe in small little pieces, but they play each other enough throughout the year. I think you just got to bite the bullet the first week or two and accept that they're going to be ramping up, and it's not going to be the most crisp football played. But again, like, Kyle, you remember that first drive against Saskatchewan in 2019 when the Ticats took 3 personal foul penalties?
Yeah.
Now imagine that happening. Okay. Now I want you to imagine that happening with Simone trying to blow Zach Galaros' head off and Delvin Breaux trying to murder William Powell out of bounds. Now imagine that happening with 70 dudes on the sideline, not beholden to CFL rules for in-game getting suspended, but instead just at a practice against each other. That's what I'm talking about. That's concerning.
Yeah, it's up to the players to, maintain professionalism in some sort of way, but sometimes emotions happen, and when you haven't hit somebody, and as long as CFL players haven't hit each other, to your point, quick trigger tempers might erupt, no doubt.
Yes, I'm with you.
Melo wins the debate.
Whoa.
Time to take a break.
All right. Congratulations.
There was a debate?
Yeah, I think you put out an outlandish comment there. You said that you've never said it before, and apparently that got you the win. So congrats, man. That's a big one for you. When we come back, play some of our favorite sound of the week for you here. Bounce through it on our way out the door on a Friday. Happy Sawdust City Friday, everybody. Use our promo code CFL.